Good afternoon, beautiful people. My name is Ryan Johnson, and I use the he, him pronouns. I am the grandson of Barbara Jackson and the son of Dr. Vanessa Jackson. I am a black man wearing a black shirt with the word soul defined, red glasses, and a beard and curly hair. We are reflecting on the violence against black bodies that has taken place both recently and historically in this country, as well as the embedded white supremacy in our dance community. In alignment with our mission at Soul Defined, it is essential for us to be visible and vocal with the community at this time. As we begin, we first want to take a moment of silence to honor and acknowledge those Black lives known and unknown that have been assassinated by police brutality and hate. Thank you. Soul Defined welcomes you to this solution-oriented conversation from what is known as the Washington, D.C. region, which is occupied unceded territory, the ancestral homeland of the Powhatan, Pamunkey, Piscataway people, and many more whose histories have been erased. We acknowledge that the foundation of this country was funded by the sales of enslaved Africans and built by their forced labor. We welcome your voice, your questions to the conversations. Please, whatever platform you are viewing this on, you can leave your comments or questions for the panelists in the chat, and we will get to them towards the end of today's program. I want to say thank you to TRJ Bridges for providing ASL interpretation for us this afternoon, and to our interpreters, thank you for your magic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, people all over the world, I am so excited about today's panel. It is a power-packed panel of innovators, cultivators, creators, just brilliant bodies that have so much to offer up today. And first, I want to introduce to you our host. He goes by the name of Gregory King. He is not only a phenomenal artist, arts activist, civil rights activist, human rights activist, and so much more, but he's also someone that I call a friend and a brother. His achievements are more than I can share. Look him up. Other than that, I'm going to go and I will be back halfway through for our artist spotlight. And now, here we go. Gregory King, it's all on you, brother.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Soul Defined, for creating this platform for us to have this amazing, well-needed, and necessary conversation. Before I go on, I would like to say and make a disclaimer, I guess, that the prompt I'm using for this conversation is a race prompt, but I want to acknowledge that sexism, heterosexism, and ableism are also concerns and should be addressed. I am so thrilled that they have been asked to moderate this conversation. And I have four amazing people who are going to introduce concepts, who are going to have you thinking about things. And the first person I would like to introduce themselves is Dani Tirrell.
Hello, I am Dani Tirrell. I am an artist based out of Seattle, Washington, from Detroit, Michigan. Is that all I need to do right now?
We can start there. Really nice to have you. Really nice to have you here. The next person is Goldie Patrick. Hey, Goldie. We're having some technical issues with your mic.
Mute.
1 second.
That's okay. I'm here. Boom. Can you hear?
Yes.
I said what up though. That's what I said when I first came on.
Okay. How are you doing today?
but I'm grateful more than anything else.
Okay, we like that. We like that. The third panelist is C. Brian Williams. Hey, Brian, how are you doing?
What's happening? How are you?
I'm well. Excited to have you here today.
Glad to be here. Look forward to chatting with all of you.
Fantastic. And the fourth and final person is Ayodele Cassell.
Hi, y'all. Nice to be here. My name is Ayodele. Thanks, Gregory. And you pronounced that beautifully.
Look at that.
Yes, I'm a artist based in the Bronx, New York. That's where I'm coming, where I'm streaming in from today.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And I want to start this conversation by sharing something I prepared for you guys, but also for the audiences at home, by saying that inclusion is a very common institutional trap. It occurs when leaders and organizations love the idea of including others in the decision-making process, yet doesn't really want to take the time or make the effort to ensure that happens. So here we are, gathered again to talk about oppressive structures that continue to advance white supremacy. I often wonder if these conversations get old or are falling on deaf ears. I wonder if we are preaching to the choir, talking to each other about how fed up we are for people not listening, for not feeling valued. I wonder if these conversations, if these talks are exactly what white organizations want so they can listen in and excuse themselves from doing the work. Or worse, maybe expect us to tell them what to do. But here are a few truths. We keep telling them what to do, and they're still not listening. We keep telling them what's wrong with the makeup of their organizations, and they do very little or nothing at all. For a lot of these organizations, the talk is all the action they need. So for this entire panel, I just want to say today, I advocate for self-care. I want you to think about what's needed for you to feel centered in your truth, your Blackness, your beauty, and your presence. I want to state some guiding principles for this conversation. Be gentle with yourselves. Give yourselves permission to feel all your feelings. The labor we do is not for them, but for us. And for those who look like us, who will come after us. Let's not re-traumatize ourselves. And the last one is, there is space in the work for joy. Hey, come on now. Okay,
Ashe.
Okay. So
Always.
I also like the idea of centering a common goal, but I think that's my teacher thing. I like the idea of preparing a syllabus and having an aim and objective. What are we trying to accomplish by having this conversation? I think I would like for us to go around this panel and just talk about what is it that you're trying to accomplish by choosing to be here with us today. And I'll call out people for them to have their voices be heard. Ayodele?
I think, the first thing that comes to my mind is what would be great is for us to realize that we have more power than maybe we think we do. And really, and I'm only always coming at it from my own perspective, but I find that oftentimes we don't realize that our voice and really like standing firmly in the center of our beliefs and our power, that is actually what ends up moving the needle forward and speaking truth to power, right? Because it's one thing to have it in this conversation where we're kind of preaching to the choir, and another to really just take that and really confront the either the institution or the organization or the person or any of that. You know, I have found that when I gather like this and then I really go over there with full confidence, that things shift. That has been my experience.
Thank you for that. And it actually reminds us, for me, like I said, I allow my work to infiltrate my pedagogy. I'm constantly asking my students to speak up, right? I need to hear your voice, your physical voice, but it's also metaphoric. You have something to say, so claim that. So thank you for reminding us of that.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian.
Muted.
Microphone's
on mute.
1 second. Let's try that again.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Thank you, guys. I was saying that, I've started Step Africa 25 years ago, and this conversation is something I've been dealing with, for a while, in terms of trying to create space, for me, for an art form that was kind of excluded from mainstream experience. So I think as we get into this moment, it is about now making even more space in stronger institutions that can bring our voices forward. So I'm much a fan of course, creating more diverse and inclusive institutions, but I'm also very interested in building strong institutions from within the community that can propel the voice forward. So that's what I've been focused on personally.
And I know sometimes people say, thank you for that. Sometimes people say there are no safe spaces. I find value in these spaces because there's something about it that feels very safe to me. Yeah, thank you for that. Dani?
Woo. The first thing I'm going to say is that when I look at institutions, we often forget that there's diversity and whiteness. And so before you hire me as a Black person, look at your staff. If they are all white, are they challenging the structures inside of that? If you're bringing me on and the rest of the staff is white and they're still not challenging it, don't bring me on. Like, that's the first thing. Like, we have to understand that there is diversity in whiteness.
Right.
And so before you hire a Black person thinking you're solving a problem, what about the 12 white people you've hired? Are they challenging the thing that's going on? If not, don't bring me on because I don't want to be the lone voice. The other thing that I want to bring to the conversation is always who's at the table. Queer folks, disabled folks, trans folks, especially when we talk about Black spaces. I tend to be around a lot of trans and queer people and non-binary people because that is the space that we feel the most bravest in. And so when we come to other spaces and we see people that don't represent us, even if they are Black, we're just like, because that may not be a thing that connects us just because we're Black. Like, if I'm non-binary and if I'm walking to a space where people don't identify as that, I'm like stepping back. So just wanting to think about who's at the table.
Thank you for that. That also reminded me of the idea that Blackness is not monolithic, right? And the experiences we bring to the table is multifaceted and it intersects, right? Because I'm a Black man, but I'm also a Black queer man, and I'm a Black queer man from Jamaica. All of those things are wrapped up in the nuances of my personality and my individuality and my identity. And so I want to shout that out. Thank you for that, Dani. Goldie, go on, slay away.
Well, as my true poet self, in the spirit of starting with the idea of preaching to the choir, listen, my granddaddy was a bishop in a Kojic church. So we preaching to the choir, that's all right. I'm good with preaching to the choir. They need the word too. I ain't trying to convert sinners. Like, let them do what they're gonna do. And so in that spirit, if this were the church, it is a Sunday, I'm down to just spread gospel, testify, learn, catch the ghost. Maybe even pass the suggested collection plate and get a little Cash App offering. I don't know.
Reparations, okay? Come on.
So I'm really interested in learning from the other panelists and sharing and offering up my experience of testimony in this here church that we call.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate your voice and your candor. I want to say, for me, when I think about conversations like this and what would you take away, I want people to feel empowered in predominantly white spaces and know that they have the opportunity to stay or leave, right? I think understanding those issues and concerns are things that I want to help people cement themselves in. And I want to dive into the conversation with one question that we can all take turns answering. And I don't want to force you to if you feel like you have something to add. But I want you to think about or explain what are some of the most important things for executive directors and artistic directors to know about inclusion and the lack thereof. How does the lack of inclusion show up in spaces? Jump in.
Ooh.
Okay. Again, stop bringing me to the table. Talk to your people. Like, I've said everything that I needed to say. I posted about it. You brought me into meetings. And I think we keep asking to be at these tables and upset that we're not getting heard. It's like at time, like we have the ability to create our own tables. We have the ability to do what we're doing today and pulling our resources together to do that. I don't want to have these conversations unless you're talking to your people that you've hired, you're talking to your board members, you're talking to your audience, you're talking to these people to say, what can we do to change this? Because I feel like it is falling on deaf ears. I feel like we've been saying it for so long. Like, this is conversations from the 60s, 50s, 70s, 80s, and we're now in 2020 and having the same dang on conversation. Like, talk to yourself. I want to talk to Black people about how we can prosper. That's who I want to talk to. I don't want to talk to you about how you can make me prosper. I'm over it.
That's a really good point, and it also makes me think what I said earlier about sometimes them thinking that having the conversation is the work. I was served on an NEA panel, and I'm going to go back to the question in a minute for the rest of you guys. But I was on this panel review board for NEA, giving money to white organizations. Let me stop. Giving money to different dance organizations, and I would read these things, and I would think, oh, everybody had the word diversity written into their grant submission, right? When I think about these organizations and these companies I have seen perform, there is no attachment to those things that they have written. And I wonder, are they? I guess they are, but that becomes problematic too, right? They know the touch points, they know the thing that's going to get people's attention, but there is no intentionality or work behind it. Go ahead. Anybody want to take on the question?
I would. I'm a former executive director of my theater company and have had the honor of working as program officer for some funders and even adjudicated, like you talked about, the application process, right? And I currently have organizations that are my clients, and some of them are around this idea of cultural diversity and include all of that, right? The good words that'll get them funding. The first thing is, part of the problem with this dynamic is that whiteness isn't defined in our country and in our culture. We shy away from defining whiteness because defining whiteness would allow us to and force them to identify the ways in which whiteness is synonymous with oppression. Whiteness is synonymous with this idea, this delusion of supremacy. Whiteness is synonymous with appropriation. And so because historically, like, it's just proven, right? Because there is the ability to disassociate organization from what it actually culturally is, which is white, it allows them to seep into other pockets of funding. My first thing is, like, if you're white, say you white. Because I say I'm Black. And my indigenous brothers and sisters, they can claim that. And my Latinx brothers, we all can identify ourselves culturally for what we are, but white institutions do not do that, and nor are they forced to do that. So they're allowed to have history, pedagogy, practice, and culture as a white organization, and then say, oh, but we're diverse because we got one program, one concert in February with some people of color. Right. So I would say being able to take the responsibility of identifying that you're white, knowing what that means, and then just being white. Like, if you're white, be white. And that does not necessarily mean you have the skill, the people, or the intent to diversify what you do. And I don't need you to. Don't come over here. That's not your lane. Like, stay in the lane that you're in, so that funding wise, you're not tapping into funding that is available and made available for people who actually do intentional work that is diverse, that is inclusive, and that is rooted in communities that they engage.
Whose responsibility, Goldie, is it to check these, the boards and the executive teams of these organizations that are not being held accountable? Whose responsibility is it?
Responsibility, I think it's a collective responsibility, but I will call people out. I'm not afraid to do that. Look, people of color, artists of color, when you sign and agree to do their program in February because they giving you a piece of their coin, that's merely a piece and that is under your own value. You are helping them validate their stance that they are inclusive and diverse. But if you said you're not, when a white institution comes to you and says, will you perform in February? If you're able to say, 1, pay me more. 2,
Right.
I want an allocation of whatever diversity funding you get for general operating, not for artistic and programming, we could start talking about partnership. Well, then there's a level of accountability there. You know, if you just want to be seen and validated by white folk, you may just sign up and be like, absolutely, this might be great.
And you're right. I think the accountability factor is not just pointing it out, it's saying these are some of the steps you can take to ensure that equity is offered. Ayodele?
Let's see. I don't know. I feel like you need to bring me back to the question again. I got so into what Goldie was saying. I started considering, like, you know,
sure.
Yeah, my current things. But go ahead.
How do you answer, Goldie? What are the most important things for executive directors and artistic directors to know about inclusion or the lack thereof?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm probably just going to echo what, you know, Dani and Goldie are saying, but maybe the first thing I think about is that it's not enough to just have us in performance, you know, that it is about, like what you were saying, Dani, about like who's at the table. Can I be a curator, you know, for this thing? You know, can I, who else can I bring along? That, you know, does it have to be just me? Can we widen, can we make the budget bigger so that it's not just the obsession of just one person? And once again, as I said, I'm going to speak from only my experience, but like we're in a situation now, I'm in the middle of a project for, you know, a pretty big institution in New York. And when I was approached about creating something, I said, thank you. Like Goldie would say, you know, thank you so much. And it has to be me and like these 7 other Black people, you know, going to what I was saying before about like really like advocating for yourself and using your voice because you have, you know, nothing to lose, right? It's important to you know, to bring that up so that we widen the space as we're challenging the way that they are operating.
And widening the space creates more space, right? I really like that. Yeah,
I love that. It's the only way I want to work anymore is like by amplification.
See, Brian?
Yeah, I think, you know, this whole idea of space and creating space is something that, but I'll just use my example. Like when I started Step Africa, like 25 years ago, what was interesting is that there was no space for my art form in the performing arts world. And to be honest, to be clear, there really was no space for the professional experience of this American tradition, even in the circles of Black dance, because it wasn't considered an art form. So therefore, what had to happen was I had to kind of create the space, not only within the larger performing arts presenter worlds, we've been very successful in doing that, but also space for this tradition, this percussive dance tradition of stepping, to be considered an art form. So what I would say to our friends and family watching is that, you know, creating space, you know, takes time regardless, right? And you have to be very intentional about building the platform and moving into the space, because it takes a lot of work. And so I just want to be very clear about, and I'm very serious about this from an organizational standpoint. So I was really looking for someone to create a space. I was trying to define my own space and then insert that new organization into the structure.
Nice.
I'm still working on it, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm glad that you insert, you know, your form, stepping, and I think this actually lays the groundwork for the next question, because we know that America has benefited from Black culture, Black bodies, Black presence, and yet still our visibility is not as present. We know that dance organizations have used Black culture for their own benefit. But how can these organizations truly honor and embrace Black history, Black dance, and the very culture they have rejected. And I wanted to use your forms like tap dance, Ayodele, step in, CC Brian. So maybe you can talk about that. How can these organizations and institutions?
Well,
Really,
I'll start.
go ahead.
Just for a second, I'll tell you about a campaign. When South Africa first started touring across the country, we were doing a lot of colleges and universities. And invariably, they would only bring us in February. So I would have just amazing February. And I love February. It's a great time to focus on the culture, and I've called it African American Employment Month. However, what we did was we started to say that we started a campaign to the people who were presenting and booking us, and we called it Not Just February. We even bought t-shirts that said that.
Not just
what we were trying to say is that we're glad that you're bringing the form. We're glad that there's space for the art form in February, but there can be more space for this form to look beyond, just this box, this bubble. And slowly but surely, it took some time. We started to get bookings in March, in January, like extended Black History Month, and in October and November and all that. So I feel like we have to operate from the points of entry. It's all about, this is not new for African American history, for Latinx culture in this society. We need to kind of figure out the points of entry and then just try to take them for what we can.
Okay. I wrote this article about this very same thing, this idea of what should they be doing to embrace us, to embrace what we have brought, to embrace what we are trying to do. And hearing different perspectives is really, really solidifying the need for that kind of embrace. What else do you think, Ayodele, could be done?
Well, I mean, it starts with the acknowledgement that we exist in the first place. Like I'm a tap dancer, so I'm going to come from that perspective. And so I've experienced and seen, years of neglect, not only for the art form itself, no matter who was doing it, white, Black, or Asian, but there was that exclusion of tap even within dance programs. And then even as tap dancing started to get more momentum in being presented, then I saw it shift to only white artists were getting presented. And that was really, really problematic to witness and also to experience. And what my response to it was to speak to them, to speak to the issue and say, this is not right. We have to change how this is, how this is being handled. I mean, yeah. So I mean, just acknowledging, and also, can I say one other thing? Sure. I think that the other thing that's important when you say like, how do they accept our culture and our, I feel like the work that we. Once again, speak for myself. My work, you're always going to hear about, the origins of the form. You're going to hear about the slave codes. You're going to hear about the origins of tap dancing. You're going to hear about, rebellions. You're going to hear about how we turned, oppression and into joy and into expression, self-expression. You're going to hear about those things so that if your work really deepens and I mean, I don't think this panel has an issue with that depth of the work, but I say that to even up and coming artists is like, share who you are really. Like, don't try to fit into a box of what you think gets presented, because otherwise we would just have like one or two things that are being expressed, So really bring the full entirety of your experience as a human to your work. Use your words in your work. I'm a huge believer in that, so that when they come to you, they know exactly who they're getting. So that you're going to get, when you get Ayodele, you're going to get great tap dancing, and then you're also going to get someone who minces no words about identity, culture, expression, and roots.
But very necessary. Goldie, we're talking about embracing. What can they do? Embrace what we bring and who we are.
I was busy over here clapping. I was just taking notes over here. I think from an institutional perspective, I would actually the question that came to mind for me when we talk about helping or informing these traditionally white institutions to do more or dig deeper in their programming of Black performers, I really am just, the thing I thought about first and foremost was, why do white people have that control as gatekeepers or presenters? So when I think about an institution and I think about the programming or their curation, I think about, who is the curator? And what is the knowledge base of the curator? Because when we're thinking about this, we can acknowledge that systemic racism is such that 9 times out of 10, that curator is white, not because they have the skill set or the experience, but because arts organizations tend to hire white people at higher wages and more frequently than they hire people of color. So your likelihood that your curator has an absence of knowledge around your particular art form, the background, the political significance of your art form is greater, because that person's expertise is probably based on their understanding, access to, and comfort.
Proximity to, yeah.
Right. So they're like, oh, I know everything about ballet. And the hiring institution does not beg the question, but what do you know about tap? What do you know about step? What do you know about traditional indigenous folk? What do you know about bachata? They don't ask those questions because they don't have to, right? So I think I would almost say that the onus is not on the performer, but on the institution to do a more thorough job on hiring culturally competent curators and presenters. And then the accountability can be on the audience and on the performers to say, not just say, no, I don't want to buy a season of tickets to your performing institution, but let me tell you why. Because it's whack. Because you never give us more, and West Africa is not enough of a location for you to tell me what this dance's origin is. You don't offer classes because hip hop dance is taught by a woman who I don't believe knows anything about hip hop culture. You know what I mean? And I think when we're able to hold that lens of accountability from audience, community, performer,
each other,
then we can shift, and we no longer have to worry about having to do that extra lifting of saying, here's the whole packet that goes with my performance, because now I got to educate you about what you don't know, because they didn't require you to learn this when you went to your PWI and got your good degree.
You know, I'm laughing, smiling, joyous, because what you're saying, it resonates. And recently, with the riots happening and taking place, it made me feel good that there is a tearing down, because I strongly believe that there is a need for that to happen, for there to be a rebuilding, right? And so dismantling has to happen across the board. We can't keep doing the same thing expecting different results. And when most of these institutions, I work in a PWI, and PWI is predominantly white institutions, for any of our listeners and audience who doesn't know. And I was hired as a diversity hire. And so I'm working in this white space, and I'm looking around like, okay, I'm being punked. Okay, but no, I'm working in that space to ignite my voice, and in the same time, I'm fighting oppression. And that's the added work that we have to do. And I do it for my students who look like me, because I do believe that they need to see that at the front of the room and in the space. But that's just added work. But what you're saying is true. There has to be a complete dismantling for us to do any kind of restructuring or rebuilding. Dani?
So I work at one of the largest universities in Seattle, Washington, in Washington State, in the dance department. They hired me to teach street styles dance, and that's a whole nother subject.
Street styles. What's street styles? That's so disrespectful.
That is okay. Another subject. Yes. So, but the former chair of the department came to me because we had this grant thing and this residency coming on. And she said, well, I'm looking for someone that, that can teach some form of hip hop and do this residency. And I was like, great. I gave her a long list of people. The issue was none of these people were known in the concert dance world. And these people will give you the history. They will give you the dance. They will And I gave her a list of people that are my mentors, that are people that I follow and I watch. And she was more comfortable going with someone who does a different version of street dance. I'm going to put it like that. She brought up names of people that did a different version. They were Black folks, but they did a different version. And let me just be very clear. They incorporated a more Eurocentric aesthetic in what they were doing. So let me just be clear. Let me not even do that. That's not cool. But I gave her people that I'm just like, no, these people would be really dope to come in. And it was like, no, fell on deaf ears. So one, don't ask me to do things. And when I do them, you do the exact opposite. You're coming to someone Black wanting to disinformation. I'm giving you the people that will give you the information very clearly, and you want to do the opposite because that is not what's going to make you comfortable, or the person who gave the residency grant is not going to make them comfortable, and it's not going to make your white audience comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, let's just call that what it is. So again, I go back to don't ask me to do things. I did a show in Seattle that was pretty successful. And with the institution, I said, one, your volunteers, they need to be volunteers that I pick. So they were pretty much all Black folks, people of color.
Right.
Again, when people walk in the doors and they walk into the lobby needs to look a certain way, it needs to feel a certain way, everything needs a certain way. So if you're hiring me or you're contracting me or whatever, you're presenting me as an artist, I'm not going to go with your standard of doing things. So part of like the history, I have to bring the history and say, if you want me in your doors, it has to be done my way.
Right.
Or it's not going to be done. And you need to stay out of the way. Like, I will respect what you have in the institution, and I will respect your rules and protocols. But if you're asking me to present my show, this is the way that it needs to look.
Right.
Your bartenders need to be Black. Your volunteers need to be Black. The music needs to be the music that I curate when people walk in the door. So it was just this whole look and feel that and that's part of the history. That's part of like, you're not going to tell me what you're going to do. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do because my name is on the show. And I know that's really cocky, but we also need to be cocky. The last thing I'm going to say is that we are in COVID. So if you want me to walk into a door to present a show, that's probably not going to be happening. TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, these young children that are presenting work are telling us what's the next step of work. So we actually have the ability to present our own stuff in the way that we need to do it. We don't really need the institutions in the way that we thought that we needed the institutions. And trust me, someone told me you need to put your Cash App and Venmo and everything you do. And I was like, nah. The minute I did that, people were like, plunk, 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 plunk. So again, we can create these things ourselves. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, all of that. Go ahead, Ayodele.
I love that, Dani. I love that so much. I love the idea of curating music. You know, it just reminded me when I did the show at the Joyce in the fall. Our pre-show music was like, and you know, the Joyce's audience are primarily and predominantly like older white people. And so, but our pre-show music was like, you know, Cardi B, Lizzo, Drake, a little salsa or whatever, and it was just so great to hear it over the speaker, you know, the intercom system. I was like, I wonder if they're looking around, like, what's going on? But it's what I'm speaking to about, like, really like bringing your full self, you know, to the situation. But I wanted to say something else, and I don't know if this pivots the conversation, and not to absolve institutions and organizations, but I was going to say that the other people that we need to start also holding accountable are our peers who do get the opportunity. So whether be they white, Black, you know, white or Black, to be honest, but like, I find like we have to bring them in as well as allies and or just hold their feet to the fire and say, look, this is your 18,000th commission. At what point are you going to say, hey, can you look at this person over here, you know, and so on and so forth. And that's really, really important because once again, I'm talking about like not putting the attention on on maybe the perceived power that an institution has, but like how do we address this like on the ground level,
Ayodele, that you didn't pivot because it's all interconnected, and I think that's really important. And I wanted to bring up this whole point of legibility, how these institutions only want to curate, only want to produce, only want to invite the things that's legible to them. And so anything that's not white-centered, because whiteness now becomes the rubric, it becomes the standard, it becomes everything becomes the thing everything else is measured against. And we somehow sometimes start conforming to that, right? Right. And so when we enter these spaces, we have to be clear. And sometimes we're not going to get the job. Sometimes they're going to say no. But we have to leave it with integrity, knowing that we're advancing a different conversation. Go ahead, Goldie.
No, that was me testifying.
Okay. So I know we talked about this a little bit, but I want to dive into it a little bit more. Accountability. Given the socio-political climate, the riots, the demonstration, the protests, the solidarity statements, right? Because now every company, every organization has put up this statement: we stand with Black Lives Matter. Yeah, come September, I'm walking into my director's office and I'm going to ask, what have you done? I need, show me the receipts. What have we done, right? So the question is, what else needs to be done in addition to the things that are happening nationally? What else needs to be done to hold arts organizations and academic institutions accountable for truly promoting equity? Go ahead, Goldie.
Run me my coin. Like reparations is not a far-fetched idea. Run me my coin.
Yeah,
that's what
real.
Happened, right? There's a huge economic disparity in the arts world, and I'm not. We're not doing this. I'm not gonna pretend like your little $5,000 or $10,000 offer for programming does anything, because Dani just explained the amount of work that goes into presenting in a white space, because y'all are ill-equipped to do what has to be done for me to present my work. I want more. I want extra. And it's not out of greed, it's out of necessity, because on top of what I want. Exactly. To compensate in the ways that you guys can't offer, I also have the emotional and the spiritual labor of dealing with an institution that has not done its work in the past to make it a safe space for me as a Black artist. So run me my coin. I think one of the mistakes that institutions are making is they're thinking forward. They're like, in the future, we're gonna, stop. You're not even gonna have a future. It's Rona right now. Don't try to make promises about what you're gonna do tomorrow. We learned that already, right? I want institutions to go back. I want them to take an inventory of what they have and how they got it. So you got a building, and you know you got a building because 1, gentrification in the neighborhood that you're in. 2, your white board of chair or your white ED was able to go into all of the people that are partners that gave you to the bank, that gave you the money for the building, then give me some of your building. And I'm not talking about on the old program and you get to get it funded by the NEA. No, out your pocket. Give me some of your building. I want it. It's mine. And this isn't a far-fetched model, right? So we've seen there's an organization, and it slips my mind exactly where it is. It's an art institution that in the midst of everything that's happening was like, you know what? We white, we could do better. We are giving our building to the indigenous arts organization that is local, because they do the work and we are on stolen land.
How about them apples? How about them apples?
You know what I mean? Come on now, come up off it. Come off privilege and all of your entitlement and pass.
I mean, that's so progressive. I love that you uttered that out loud and said that in this space. I think that is I mean, I don't necessarily see it like happening. Like, I don't know, I feel like, but I love that, but it's possible. And I love the sentiment and the spirit of that. That's really beautiful. Thank you for voicing that.
I know that we're trying to do the artist spotlight. I think it might be time for that.
Oh, okay. Oh, Ryan.
Hey, Black man.
What up, Black man? No, so just, y'all know I love history. It's something that drives and fuels my artistry. So check out my entry of Ayodele's Diary of a Tap Dancer from New York City Center coming out in August. It's about identity, and it's very educational. But we talk about reparations, right? And a lot of people, before we go to artist spotlight, it's hard for me not to talk, y'all.
I know.
Y'all got me over here. I had to get a pillow for my seat. I'm up here just hype. You know what I'm saying? That and it's coffee. But there was this thing called the Emancipation Compensation Act, right? A lot of people don't know it exists. It was, I believe it was April 16th, 1862. This bill passed that paid slave owners up to $300 per enslaved African that they freed, up to $1 million, right? So even though we had this idea of emancipation, there was generational wealth provided by the government, United States government, to these entities. So when we talk about reparations, we're not just saying, hey, give every person of color, every indigenous, every black person, whoever fits into whatever acronym white society has created for us this week. It's called BIPOC, if you didn't know. We don't just want the money. In order to assist in the generational healing that has been caused by generational trauma that's rooted in the enslavement of people that look like us, we need the resources to get the necessary therapy. We need the resources to get to create businesses and combat redlining or language within grants that doesn't fit within the demographic of our people. There's a lot that goes into it. All that to say, one of the ways that Soul Defined is staying true to our mission and supporting companies that fit underneath of the BIPOC umbrella is by using this platform to showcase talented individuals that may not make it past the rubric or may not be acknowledged in spaces because of the demographic or makeup of their company or their location or things of that nature. And this episode, we get to showcase a company from Chicago. It's one of my favorite companies. It is run by some amazing people. I lost my first cutting contest to the co-artistic director while I was out there at Dada for LA Tap Fest. But they are doing tremendous work in Chicago for young people, but they're also combating the white supremacy in the tap community head on with open letters, open dialogues, open conversations, and are making great strides. So it is a privilege to share with you Mad Rhythms as our artist spotlight for this week. Enjoy.
My name is Brill Barrett. I'm the founder, co-founder and director of M.A.D. Rhythms, which stands for Making a Difference Dancing Rhythms. I started M.A.D. Rhythms in 2001 as a way to give back to my community. If it wasn't for me being exposed to tap as a young person, then I'm not sure what my future would be. So I felt that it was my responsibility to turn around and do the same for young black men and eventually young black women coming up in the community who could get something from this dance the same way I got something from it.
My name is Starr Dixon, also known as Starr. I am the assistant director of M.A.D. Rhythms, and I also choreographed the piece you're about to see, which is entitled Ultralight Beam. The premise is oftentimes when we have struggles or we're trying to dismantle something, we don't work together. We try in separate groups, and the whole point is we have to come together as a village, and it takes a village to fight.
Obviously.
Just like, damn, meet up with your friends, I'm in this race, so I'm just in. Why they want to know who I'm damn? Trying to stand up with your family, try to look just like see you can't see them. Let's make it so free, or so hard that the day was got your heart. Can't tweet, this is my part, nobody else me. This is my part, nobody else me.
Oh, oh.
Yeah, y'all. That's what I'm talking
Come
about.
through. Come through.
I
Listen,
love
for
them
more
so much.
information on M.A.D. Rhythms, feel free to check out their website, and it's M.A.D. M-A.D.D. Rhythms.
Come through.
And Ryan Starr is going to be the next entry too on Tuesday.
Yes,
So if you want to see the
You have to
choreographer
look
of
up
that,
Starr. Starr is actually another one of the talented artists that Ayodele is showcasing. And I get chills when I think about it because, you know, a lot of times we talk about the things we want to do. We talk about the change we want to make. But sometimes we get so busy that we don't always have the space to make those or implement those changes as quickly as we like. And what I appreciate about my big sis over there up in New York is that she's not just talking the talk or walking the walk, but she's actually doing the work. And when people say, well, what is the work? Follow her and you'll see.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
oh,
All that to say is please support M.A.D. Rhythms. They are an amazing organization doing amazing work with the youth and young adults in Chicago. And yeah, it's time to get back into this conversation. We have about 40 minutes before I'm back. I'm over here taking notes and learning and growing myself, and I hope you all are doing the same out there. To everyone that's here, y'all are amazing. Wah, 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 wah. All right. Brother King, it's on you, man. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much. Yeah, something that Ryan just said that just made me really excited to be here, and it's this idea of change. I was in grad school, and I was in dance history, and we had dance history for 2 years. And in the syllabus for dance history, we had 2 days where we could talk about African Americans' contribution to dance. 2 days. And in those 2 days, we talked about Donald McHale, Alvin Ailey, and Elio Pomare, who wasn't even black, but he was Colombian. But we got our black people could say, but in terms of African Americans' contribution to dance. And all of our readings were from white women, scholars who are white women. Amazing scholars, robust information, necessary information. But I left grad school in search of the black voice when it comes to dance. Where were my people? Where were they? And so it made me go, for me, I had to think about how I was going to plant myself in the retelling of histories through my pedagogy. I had to stop asking for white people to write about me. I had to stop waiting for white people to write about me. And so if I'm going to teach, I wanted to ensure that my voice was going to be heard. So I became a writer out of necessity. It was important for me to plant myself in the retelling of the histories that I was going to tell the next generation of Black artists. It was necessary. So I didn't get to go, oh, well, someone else didn't do it. So the change that we're talking about, we're all responsible for that. So my question to you is, what are you doing? And this is just for you to take with you along the way. What are you doing? This second part of the conversation, I want it to be very much about problem solving. Not that we weren't doing that before, but very intentional problem solving. In thinking about the late John Lewis, the term good trouble continues to come to mind. Good trouble. What does that mean? What does that look like? Dismantling, messing things up, but it's good trouble. I think about good trouble as needed disruption, as a force, as a call to action, right? So in digging a little deeper, I'm going to say something. I'm going to recite something. Everyone will surely debate the reasons why diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives make people skeptical. Is America really ready for inclusion? Are educational institutions truly ready for inclusion? Are artistic directors of dance companies really ready for inclusion? And if they are ready, are there hurdles? Are there barriers? The truth is, people get uncomfortable when dealing with issues of race, gender, sexuality, but comfort is a privilege of whiteness. Black people exist in a constant state of discomfort that has somehow become second nature to us and how we perform ourselves in the world. What we can't do, what we shouldn't do, is pacify white people's personal anxiety, their fear, or their guilt about showing up and doing the work. With constantly worrying about the feelings of the white people around us, how do we dig deeper in resolving issues of race and inclusion?
Well, I would say it's a heavy thing. We talk about getting into solutions. And, I've really enjoyed talking to all of you guys. And I think as we move into the solution space, I've been a student of African-American history my entire life, right? So I view studying and learning about African-American history as essential to any history. Now, I need to pick up on my Latinx history, quite honestly. We know that the American history books only show one side. And so I'm surprised by that, right? So what I've had to do is, and what my family's had to do is augment that relationship. So with this movement, what I'm hoping will happen for a solution is that more people will be forced to learn the history of others. Because once you really know the history of the country, you have to look at it differently, right? So for Step Africa in particular, I've constantly been trying to, I've been trying to create documents nonstop that tell the history. I'm trying to be proactive as possible in telling and documenting the history, because I know it has been perpetually excluded. And when you know your history, there's been perpetually excluded. So you're in this moment now, you're like, okay, let me do everything that I can to insert myself into the space. Now, on the heels of the loss of George Floyd, which is just one in countless, and way too many of you think about it, right? We have an opportunity to push this needle, this dial way forward. And I'm excited.
That's really good. As we think about the history and education, it has to find its way into our performances. audience engagement. I know a lot of organizations use that as some kind of talking point, but I don't know if they're effectively getting the information and how that's crossing over. But I do believe there has to be a component with regards to our performance and what does that do for educating the audiences. Go ahead, Dani.
In thinking about John Lewis and Rosa Parks and all those people, we have to first admit that we are not as brave as they were. We can talk about good trouble, but are we really brave enough to jump into good trouble? I think about Marsha P. Johnson. I think about Sylvia Rivera. I think about those people that was there when the Stonewall riots happened. I think about Miss Major, these Black trans women, these Chicano Latin trans women. I am not as brave as they were. And so I'm gonna start from that point. For me to enact change, I have to understand how brave am I in this day and age. And that is how I can move forward. I can't quote them and ride on their shoulders, and I'm not that brave.
I like that.
So how brave am I? And so I take where I'm at and then I move the needle forward. And hopefully somebody will see where my braveness is, my boldness is, and then they move from there. But we can't keep quoting people if we're not ready to do that because we feel like we have something to lose. They have things to lose, but they say we have much more to gain to set our people free. And so that is part of the solution. You have to
know your deficit. That's the t-shirt I'm talking about.
So
I love that.
That's where I'm at right now.
I love that, Dani.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like Gregory.
No, please. Wait,
no, I know. I just want to acknowledge, Dani. I feel like I have like you're tethered to my brain because I was thinking the same thing. I was saying that I was thinking that it takes a tremendous amount of courage to really fulfill what that quote is. That good trouble. And what I think is like what. You have to know that you have to be willing to walk away. You have to be willing to say the word no. You have to be willing to, sacrifice what you perceive as like something that's going to push you forward or pull or move you forward. And I say perceive because sometimes we get caught up thinking that there's only one way to accomplish what we need and what we should be getting. And the thing is like, that's not true. I mean, I always say like I come from a place of radical optimism, and I really try to move forward as much as possible, knowing that exactly how I want to see something happen is how it's going to happen, right? And so I think that when you kind of operate in that way, then I think it's easier to get in good trouble because the bravery and the courage does kick in, and you say, and you can challenge situations and challenge people, challenge institutions, and also or sometimes you have to walk away. Sometimes these people, a certain place is not gonna get it. And also I don't really feel like that it's our job to fully transform every space that we come into contact with. And so I think that, Gregory, to your point earlier about self-care and about being, I think that's part of it too, is like, when do we walk away, not because of lack of bravery, but because we have the faith and knowing that somewhere else, somebody is going to listen. And that is what's going to widen the space and make things really move forward in a way that benefits and us. You know what I mean?
I don't know if it's cold in the apartment, but I'm getting a lot of goosebumps. I'm serious. It's really inspiring and eye-opening. And it's making me realize that my presence here at Kent State is this is where I need to be. My mentor, when I was thinking of coming here, I was choosing between two schools, and she said, "Go where you're needed." And so that understanding of space and changing space really did sit with me. But no, I'm gonna go back to Dani for a second because that know your deficit, that is really, really, really powerful, and it's gonna sit in a cauldron for me for a while. That is necessary.
I wanted to
go ahead.
Add on just this part also. In this walk, there are times that we know that we have to walk alone. that we are going to be the only ones walking through that door, busting that door down, busting those windows down. And again, I look at a lot of the younger dancers and artists. I tell them, like, in 4 years, 5 years, I'll be 50. I'm about to like go do something else. But I understand, like, my fight is for them. It's not for me.
Yep.
And they may not be in a position to have the voice that I have right now. And it's not to pat myself on the back, but I understand that someone had to do it for me because I didn't have the voice at that time. And so for those of us that are in these positions, our fight is for people behind us, in front of us, around us, beneath us, on top of us. That is our fight. Our fight is not ours. So that's just what I wanted to add, is like, we're going to be alone.
That is great. And I do believe that a lot of us are fighting together, and we need to remember that as well. We're doing this together as a community. So even in the doing of the work, institutions, organizations, arts houses, there is the facade of victory, right? And I say that because of the recent putting out of solidarity statements. Everybody jumped on the bandwagon. And I know that now that they've all put out these statements, put out these solidarity statements, what's next? That's a question that lingers in my mind. What's next? What are we expecting from them? Go ahead, Goldie.
That's a great question. I read it before we got together, but now that you said it, when you said it in after this, that's a real good question. And I think it echoes your question that you just asked around America's readiness to really do the work around what does it mean to confront this delusion of white supremacy, right? And dismantle these systems that are built on racist values and culture. And I think, quite honestly, for me, the answer is no. Institutions are not ready. White America is not ready. America's economy is not ready. And I think that readiness is that lack of readiness is because it is tied directly to the question that you just asked, them being willing to give up privilege. And I think the idea of giving up privilege is something that is very easy to have to speak. It's a rhetoric, but we haven't talked about what does it look like as practice. And so, when we talk about what it looks like as practice, we are talking concrete terms of how many board members are you releasing from your board? How are you changing your board terms to reflect this performative mission statement you put out about understanding Black lives? How are you reshaping and rehiring staff? Even though, oh my God, you love them and they've been there for so long, how do you then build a staff that is equitable and in representation of these statements that you've made? How do you reshape a mission of an organization to say it is no longer enough to say that we will present dance? It is now important for us to do X, Y, and Z. I think the other part of that is that the reason why I say they aren't ready is because most of those organizations don't necessarily have the leadership in place to be bold, to be willing to get in the kind of trouble that they would get in, to say, we need something new. We need someone new here. I think there are boundaries that have been put up for young leadership to be in a place to imagine a very courageous, different world. And I also think that there are factors that are put up in place that mirror the factors in the funding world around who is equipped to do the work. And I think most institutions make skill and experience synonymous with ability when it's not, especially when we know that skill and experience become something you have access to as a result of whatever, privileges you have in this world. So dismantling a lot of those ideas internally is, I think, what it looks like. It looks like changes in boards, changes in staff, reshaping mission statements, and reallocating funding differently.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Let me add to that. I think this is where, because thank you, Goldie, for that, because it's very true. Outside of looking inside those organizations, this is why I'm really become an aggressive advocate for building our own institutions. And it's going to take massive redistribution of dollars that you all have mentioned here, that historically we have not gotten access to the structural racism issues and whatnot, that leaves us kind of institution poor right now. And I feel that because we don't control institutions, we're trying to create space within, and readily so, which is great, like within Kent State. We're trying to change Kent State from the bottom up. We're trying to renovate, I don't know, the American Ballet Theater. I don't know who we're trying to renovate. And that's a different challenge versus, I think that the American ecology and the American structure, what we deserve are strong institutions that can attract the dollars that have been historically underfunded, historically under-resourced and invested, because that's going to allow us to answer our own questions. And I really love changing from within. I'm really taken from the standpoint of a social entrepreneur. I really have never worked in any of those organizations. I've always been outside, so I kind of have this outside mentality anyway. But I do feel that we've got to figure that out. And so I will say that in terms of equity, what has to happen as well, because it comes down to resources, like I would love for Ayodele to have a full-time company of full-time tap dancers turning it out in New York and representing the tradition from a W-9 basis, W-2 basis versus a W-9 basis, because that allows us to control employment opportunities for our artists. And we don't really have to answer the same way. I mean, at the end of the day, you always answer to somebody. Let's be honest. Your board of directors,
right?
Opinions, come on. But we got to get these organizations going. So I think, Goldie, if we're going to add that in terms of versus equity and diversity inclusion from within existing structures, how do those structures to help us to invest and individual donors to invest in Black-led, Latinx-led, BIPOC-led organizations so that they too can raise that voice. We have to work there too. We have to do all this DEI work in those organizations in the same way.
Right.
Exactly. And if I can just say real quick, that also looks like holding funders accountable. It's what we talked about in the beginning. You cannot give $1 million to white organization for diversity initiatives. You have Black organizations, when you have Indigenous, when you have Latinx, when you have all of these other organizations that are led by people of color that do that work full time. Right. So there's this accountability on funders to say it's not enough to give $1 million to white institutions because they gonna hire a Black person or company. Give that $1 million to these Black owned or operated or Indigenous or people of color operated organizations and institutions, and you cannot measure their artistic value or integrity without a culturally sound and competent board of adjudicators. You can't do it, and you can't compare it to white institutions when you do it.
I completely agree. Dani, do you want to contribute to the facade of victory?
I think everybody said it. I have nothing else to contribute. It's been said.
That is true, and it leads me and us to this other part about truth telling, right? I'm from Jamaica, so I'm known for, yeah, I'm that guy. But the idea of truth telling, are institutions telling the truth when it comes to their efforts, their intentions, their impact? And what can we do? Because if they're not going to tell the truth, they're going to tell us, if they're going to give us a 6 and tell us it's a 9, where do we have the conversation? Where do we go from here if we can start the conversation in the same book on the same page?
I think it goes to what Brian was saying. Brian was saying, which is we gotta do our thing. We have to build. Yeah, I mean, as well. In addition to that should be something that is it's certainly worthy of our investigation and our time.
Okay.
Because you can't. I think it's an illusion and a facade to think that you are going to go into any institution as one person and change that from in all aspects and all. That's not going to happen. Right. I mean, it could, and that not to be contradictory to my radical optimism, but I mean, it could. But
I love your radical optimism.
Yeah, no, it's just it's not. You can't control everybody. This is just basic human knowledge, right? So, but what you can control, right, Brian, is your energy and your efforts and your intention and how you order your steps so that you build something for yourself, so that then you can build something so that you can include others and you can support others, to do the same for them, and that's how you start to really build. That's how we change it.
Because, you know, if I had waited, I just kind of interesting to think about that. I'm getting the goosebumps now, Gregory, in terms of, like, I think about when I was trying to create Step Africa and create this arts organization, like create professional space for steppers to create work and all that. If I had waited for the structure at large to the work,
it wouldn't have happened.
It wouldn't have happened because there was no understanding of the tradition. There was no value for the art form. There was no they didn't even know about the art form. So I'm expecting someone who knows nothing about the form to. So we have to create the space. Now look, I don't think it's. I also think that we know that, but I had to do that within a historically and structurally racist society. I know that, and I think we've got to do better. America has to do better with that going forward because we shouldn't have to. It shouldn't be such a burden for us to bear.
Yeah,
you know, we've borne it for quite some time in the country. Hopefully, we can bear a lot less as our next generation, to Dani's point, go forward. They shouldn't have to bear the same burdens that John Lewis did, that we're dealing with in this environment. But the question is, what does that really look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you ask the question of if they're telling us it's a 9, but it's really a 6, how do we trust them? It's built on the idea that we don't recognize that it's a 6. I'm just not going to them asking them what number that is. I'm going to them saying it's a 6. Why is it a 6?
Right.
You know, and I think I love that Brian is here because, you know, having been in DC, having been a fan of Step Africa, having had so many friends audition and get employed by Step Africa, having so many students participate in Step Africa programming, it is a model, right? It is a model and a forever reminder that there is very little to anything we need to rely on a cultural outside source for. Like, for why? You know, and so I think this question of trust comes to the place of I'm not interested in their interpretation of number. If it's data, I can read data.
Right.
See your data, I can read it. And if I can't read it, I have a Black person I trust that can read it. And so I think the more inspired we are by leaning inside our own communities of people, the more we affirm some of our own values at our own tables, the less we need from outside institutions or outside organizations to validate us or for us to trust them. Like, I'm good on that.
This is true. This is not a new conversation. We know this. We have been talking about this. But there is an added truth to it. And the added truth is we somehow rely on these white voices to value us, right? When you think about Ayodele going to the Joyce Theater and performing, and who's going to write her review, right? Some white man from New York Times. And so there's this, and so, you know, I'm really working on ensuring that the dance criticism voice becomes a living, and because we have to think about who are the gatekeepers, who are the stakeholders in this advancement of dance as an art form, or just the arts in general, because we have too much to contribute and we have too much to lose if we don't allow our voices to be augmented. Go ahead, Dani.
I'm a curator for a Black arts organization here in Seattle, Washington. And the thing that I think that we challenge each other on, and I challenge the group on, is that we have to tell our own truth about who we are as an organization. Again, who are we inviting to the table? Who are we not inviting to the table? Who are we, if we have a show, if I'm curating a show, is it going to be a particular look of the show because that's what's going to be okay? Or am I saying, like, this person interests me and this person is a queer, Black, trans, disabled person. This person is a hearing impaired person. This person is that. I think we set the model. So it's like, if I'm curating the show and if we are a Black arts organization, we understand our diversity. We hope we understand our diversity statement is that Blackness is not a monolith. That is our tagline. Someone said that before. And so we have to open the doors for all forms of Blackness to exist within the arts for ourselves. And if white people come to the show and white presenters come to the show, they're coming to see what we're doing.
Sure.
Are we upholding this thing that we're asking them to uphold?
What are we afraid of?
What are we afraid of?
Yes.
good question. I think it's we are afraid of that some Black person is not going to like us. I think inside of our organization, it's like, you know, if we invite queer people to the table, then it's like, oh, the straight people may not come. But I'm like, damn, I'm a queer curator. Like, who the hell you think I'm gonna invite to the table? Like, you know.
Yeah.
But I also am going to invite other people in. And if you come to the show, you're coming because you're understanding that Blackness is this thing that stretches so far and so wide that inside of everybody's story, you're going to find something of yourself.
Sure.
We just did a fundraiser, and people purposely came to the fundraiser, white organizations, to see what we were doing. Again, I understand in Seattle, we are setting a standard.
Yeah. I want to, you know, keep going a little bit, but yes, I think that's very true, and I do believe some of it is fear driven. Some of it is still trying to fit within the construct of this white centeredness that is default. But I want to talk about the institutions, and this is another accountability factor. The institutions, they want to do something, they get it done. Right? The things that they want to get done, they get done. So why is it that inclusion and equity efforts and initiatives are still lingering on their priority list? Seriously, right? Oh, we want to get this new $10 million building up. It's up in 2 weeks. But the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are always lingering somewhere in the middle / the bottom of the pudding cup. How do we get them to prioritize diversity and equity initiatives?
They do. Go ahead, Goldie.
It's some basic reasons why they don't. They do it when they get paid to do it, because it's a funding opportunity, not because it's a mission of their organization or they want to because they can't. Like, no, just scratch that, right? If the new funding trend was around including giraffes, you would have 59,000 people talking about we got a giraffe ballet happening. Right? Let's be real.
Okay.
There's in the arts nonprofit world, we know that, right? Like in the nonprofit world, we know that you chase dollars, right? And so if it is not financially, if it doesn't help them get money, then that's not their priority. So when we see this move towards DEI, it is not a result of the organization's culture shifting. It's a matter of the financial opportunity shifting. That's what that is, flat out. Number two, their board, which most boards are predominantly white, unless it is a organization led by or founded by a person of color, Black, Indigenous, or person of color, right? Their boards are white. And so their boards, like an executive director could have a revolutionary vision of inclusion and go to the board, and a board that is white, 9 times out of 10 male, 9 times out of 10 wealthy, is gonna be like, I don't see why we need to do that, right? So it's not necessary. And it's not necessary, and it's not a part of a cultural shift. It's a part of a funding shift. So it's not going to happen. I'm not going to say it's not going to happen. I'm going to say that the movement of it happening will have to be different than the other movements that have happened around where programming priorities have gone.
You said it's not a part of the funding, cultural shift, it's a part of the funding shift. But isn't funding a part of the culture? I think that is a deep part of the culture. This idea that money is driving this whole thing. And so I do believe that the culture has to shift.
I mean, it absolutely does. And as long as you have it, I mean, that's why it's so multi-layered, right? And I don't want to hog up this part of the conversation. It's multi-layered in that the funding becomes available, an organization sees that they can get the money for it, but they're only able to do that once they get artists of color that will jump on board with no further need. So if you get artists that say, sure, we'll do it, right? Then they're able to do it. I would think that if artists that do want to participate are able to think about how they benefit far past performance, then you can have an impact, even though it may have not been the priority of the organization. So you have performers that say, these are the circumstances in which I will partner with you. And that's not one performer, that's all the performers.
Got it.
Now they can't say, well, I can't go to Ayodele, I'm gonna go to so-and-so. Nope, Keisha, Ayodele, Tyrone, everybody on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
And you gotta have these things in place.
Right.
I love that.
Good. That's good. Ayodele, did you want to say something?
Oh, yeah, I think I was thinking about something from before. So I'll just say it just to throw it in the space. But I just wanted to like offer and like just widen the expectation or conversation in that I think that there's always somebody in the institution that gets it. You know, there might be one out of like an entire building. But I once again, speaking from my experience, you know, the reason I was at the Joyce was because Aaron Maddox, who was the new program director, you know, after I think Martin Wexler, I believe, who had been there forever, I think, you know, Aaron Maddox took it upon himself to come to a Give Me conversation where I was talking about decolonizing dance. And he heard what I was saying, and it spoke to him in making a change in that institution at the Joyce Theater, you know? And so, and I believe that Aaron Maddox has been an incredible ally and pushing our voices forward. Same thing at New York City Center. We have Stanford McKeeshy. Like, you know, there are people that are really like advocating for us. And I think sometimes it's I don't know. I think it would do us some good to also see the opening rather than seeing all of the doors closed.
Come on, radical optimism.
I mean, I listen. That's how
I love it.
It's true. It's true. I think so.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. Dani, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good.
I want to see Brian. I don't want to cut you out.
I'm good. No, I'm good, man.
So I want to, and this is the final solution-oriented part of the conversation we're going to have, and this is the idea of a winning solution, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you have to experience the desperation of inclusion before you truly understand what exclusion is all about. That's not mine, by the way. I heard it on a TED Talk. I'm not even going to claim it. I'm citing sources. Listen, I'll read it again. Sometimes you have to experience the desperation for inclusion before you truly understand what exclusion is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If you are not white, straight, male, able-bodied, Christian, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It would be very easy for us to talk about generally accepted practices or continue with business as usual. But what needs to be changed for there to be a winning solution? And what could that winning solution look like?
Well, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say, to kind of get the ball started, what I'm looking to see out of this movement, this restructuring, or this attempt at restructuring, is a more equitable distribution of resources.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think that is what is, I mean, reparations is something I've always believed in. It's amazing to see that it remains on the table. I do think it is a very viable concept that needs to be explored to counter so many years. But then, of course, we have what's happening to indigenous people here and the challenges with the Latin, so many issues for the country to deal with. But if the country begins to really redistribute and give more access and opportunity to all in a true way, I mean, it's so hard to kind of imagine because it's been so exclusionary. Mm-hmm. I want to be radically optimistic. It's and with true inclusive active activation, because I know we miss out on so many voices when we don't. When the collective knee is on the neck of so many people, you really miss out on great voices. So I'm hoping that we can see a distribution of resources that will allow us to really make America what it can be in a new space. That would be a great way for us to move forward.
What could it look like for you, Ayodele?
I think for me, currently, and how I see it and how I've ordered myself in the last year, it's about fulfilling an expanded version of myself, so that not only am I an artist, not only can I create work, but I can be on your board.
Yeah.
And, you know, and maybe I'm not going to bring the 50,000 that maybe that the board needs in order to be part of the board right now, but maybe you need you need my ideas, you need my expertise and my connection with other artists, and being like having been of the culture, you know. So I think I think part of the winning solution is also to really expand and explore all of our power, you know, so that we become the CEOs and we become the, you know, or the board members, or we become the producers, we become the curators, we become all of those things, and not just somebody who can make dance or write a play, or, you know what I mean?
Ayodele, you have a really good point, because I was actually talking to an artist director the other day, and the person was very downtrodden that their board was so white. Like, who's your board, girl? Bye. I was just curious as to why you're now worried that the board is white. You picked the board, but I had to somehow reshape my vision with the person to understand that same thing, that currency is not just about how much money they can offer. What else can this person offer on your board? Are they a voice of the community? Can they offer you a space to rehearse? You know, can they offer you insight into your programming to augment the visibility of underrepresented community? There are different ways that people who are ADs or executive directors can rethink how they view what their board members have to offer. That would be really, really.
And I just want to take that moment to shout out my wife, Toria Beard, because she's the ED.
Come on, Toria.
She's the ED of a nonprofit, and I see her making those changes and challenging the current board members, saying, no, we should have a young person. Just because he's 14 doesn't mean that his ideas are not valuable. You know, we should have a parent of the students that we are working with. We should
Absolutely.
have. So shout out Toria, because I know she's watching, but you know, that's really important.
It's important and it is necessary. I was asked to serve on the board, and I'm, you know, all excited. Oh, Greg, you're gonna be on the board. I'm like, yes, come on, get it. I walked into one of their first meetings. I was the only Black person. I said, not me, not today. No, ma'am. Because I knew what that was gonna be. That was gonna be labor. And so I was like, love you, mean it. So I bounced. But it's true, I'm constantly asking these questions. Do we have the voice of someone who was incarcerated? Do we have the voice? We have to have multiple perspectives if we're gonna talk about serving the community.
Exactly.
We're gonna have to. Go ahead, Dani.
I was just saying exactly. Gregory, I did the same thing. I was asked to be on the board, and I walked in there, and they said something about fundraiser and diversity. Everybody looked at me, and I said, no. I said, no. I did not. I literally, everyone looked at me, and I was just like, oh, cute, no. I think part of the solution for me is that it starts with self. You can't ask people to do something that we're not willing to do for ourselves. I know that in the small town of Seattle that I live in, I have a rather large voice and I make really strong demands, but those are things that I've done for myself.
Right.
I'm battling and I'm challenging the misogynoir, the misogyny, the transphobia, the homophobia, the internalized anti-Blackness. I'm challenging that within myself. And so to do better, because I can't say that someone else holds those things and knowing that I hold those things myself. And just because I have all these intersections does not mean I am absolved of holding these things. And so when I go to an institution and I'm asking them to do better, that is because I'm doing the work, or I have done the work to do better myself. So I think the solution is that we have to start looking at ourselves and where are we holding these old standards and thought processes, and we're still holding the oldness and we're asking somebody else to do something new.
That is so true. That is really true. I want us to go around, and this is, I'm putting you on the spot. It's okay, you can't beat me. I'm putting you on the spot right now, and I want us to each talk about something we are doing within our practice and or personal life to be more inclusive.
Repeat, say again.
we're going to go around this panel, and I would like for you to speak about one thing you're doing within your practice or your personal life that's making you be more inclusive.
Oh.
I can start.
Okay.
Give you time to think about it, Goldie. We're coming back to you. So for me, I because of I'm inserting things into my teaching practice. Every year that I teach, every semester, I have to prepare a syllabus, right? And every year, this syllabus is written in English. And I thought to myself, what would it look like for a Spanish-speaking person to get a copy of my syllabus written in their first language? So this semester, next semester, I'm going to do two syllabi, one in English and one in Spanish.
Nice.
It's a start. I mean, of course, there's going to be French people, but it's a start towards intentionality in terms of who is in the room and whose voices are being augmented.
Yeah. I think what I'm doing now, I mean, I feel like I've always done it in a way, but I'm really being super intentional about it now. It's passing the mic. It's like, I feel like I'm in a, I'm in a situation currently where people come to me for things and I express my deepest gratitude and I'm happy and I'm proud to have gotten a seat at that table. And now it's like, and here's Ryan and here's Starr and here's, and being really like, really dismantling the idea that one person can, change a whole movement. It's, you need your people. You need your people. We need to support each other. We need to pass the mic, and not be an attention hog all the time.
I love that. See, Brian?
For me, it's about women, I think. Women.
Beautiful.
I mean, South Africa's always we've had female artistic directors and female artists and arts administrators, but I think I would like to do better at really raising their voices in terms of choreographically going forward, and even in terms of how we operate. Like really breathing into that voice, because when you lead an organization, you become kind of dominant, right? And you start to recognize that you have to. Those other voices can be so critical, and I do think the voices of women in my organization are going to be transformative for the future.
That's powerful. That's beautiful. Thank you.
Yay.
Goldie?
I am a vocal public accomplice for two particularly disenfranchised communities, one being LGBTQIA with an emphasis on Black trans women, and the other one being Indigenous community First Nations. And so what that looks like in my practice is asking spaces where I'm either meeting, presenting, or attending if there is a land acknowledgement before we begin. And it's just really a simple question that yes or no. They could be like no, and I'll be like, okay. And if they say yes, that's good. I just moved to Harlem, and so I'm doing the personal work of finding out what territory I'm on so that I can be mindful to include that in my morning prayer and meditation and libation. And then the other one is real small, but it's real important to me. Social media seems to be a place that a lot of people chime in, and they do these challenges where they're like, I sent this to you because I love you and you are a strong Black woman. It's nice, but it also becomes a space where we become exclusive of trans Black women. And so every time or anytime those challenges come my way, I ask and kind of lightly suggest that they take where they have maybe given that to me and give it to a Black trans woman instead.
Yeah. But before we go to you, Dani, there is truth to the whole idea of knowing when to step up, step back, or step away. And it really is. People think, oh, well, why can't you? Should be able to know, okay, this is not for me. Let me step back and create space for somebody else. A part of an organization that we're doing programming for next year, and I asked them how many ballet teachers were on the roster. And I think in terms of intentional equity, you go 2 ballet teachers, 2 this teachers, 2 or 111. There's a way to do it if you're going to be intentional, and it cannot be apologetic. So you have to be radically. Go ahead, Ayodele. Optimistic.
Radically optimistic.
I believe it can happen. If you want to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. That Dani?
I cringe at this question only because
Don't cringe.
I just the work that I do it because I don't want any type of attention, because it's what I feel like I'm supposed to do.
Sure.
And so that's why I cringe. It's nothing bad. It's just like I'm just show up. I will say this. One of the things that I did, someone came to me to curate a show featuring Black trans women, and one of my really, really close friends, she is like, my niece is a Black trans woman. And I said, no, she's going to curate the show. I'm going to work behind the scenes. And the person was like, well, I need to pay you for the show. And I said, no, you don't. And so it's that thing of just like showing up in the fact that it's like, I don't need any of that. I'm here to make sure that I'm in service to the Black trans women. With the company that the organization that I'm the curator with, we are now bringing on a youth curator. Ayodele, what you just said was correct. I have knowledge that I need to pass on.
Yeah.
And that is the labor that I'm going to get for free, especially to Black folks and especially to Black young folks.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's my responsibility to say like, hey, we're bringing you on and I'm giving you this information that I have. And I only know that much, but I want to help move you forward because I see what you're doing, and what you're doing is so important. And I want to make sure that you feel supported and invested. And I think the other thing is like, when there's certain people that are asking for money, I give without my name attached to it.
Yeah.
Like, just here's the donation. I don't need no one to know that I did that. And again, I'm like, hate saying this stuff, but it's just reality. It's not, again, it's not about me. It is about serving the art form. It is about serving what I feel like is becoming my higher purpose, which will take the self out of it. It's just showing up for people.
Yeah. You see, America has an ugly past, or an ugly present too. But I am hopeful. I'm hopeful because as an artist, I get to insert my not only perspective, but my creativity and expressivity into the students I teach, into the work that I do, into the communities that I enter. And when Ryan asked me to be a part of this discussion, I was excited. Why? Because I think engaging in conversations like this in this kind of space does empower you, and I feel empowered. So I want to thank you guys for allowing me to be a part of your Sunday afternoon, your Sunday evening.
Thank you.
I feel enriched. I'm going to have a dirty martini. But I feel full from this conversation, and I can't wait to take it back to my different communities. Thank you so much, and thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Look, we're not done just yet. So
I
if
know.
you're watching, don't hang up because he just closed out the whole program.
No, you guys.
No. Seriously, man. I'm a student always and forever. And I have like 2 whole pages of notes that I have right here. Just know that this fall we will have a Know Your Deficit conversation hosted by my good brother, But the reality is that we all have power.
Yeah.
Every one of us has power. Everyone that is of this planet in this realm has internal light within them that allows them the ability to achieve things, to create great change. And I'm honored that I can call on all of you and be like, hey, I have this idea. Can you be a part of it? And to know that you all support me and support Soul Define as we are working to being the institutional hub for tap dance in Washington, D.C. That's a large ask. And it's more than just presenting art. It's more than hosting these conversations. It's really about serving the community in a healthy way that represents bodies that look like us.
Yeah.
And we've all watched a million panel discussions at this point. Thank you to COVID, and ways that I wanted to diversify our space is with artist spotlights to uplift companies and artists that fall into the BIPOC community. And this is the other thing. This is what I love because Black people will hear a quote and put that thing on a T-shirt in less than 24 hours and sell that thing, and you will see it. You will see it walking down the street 2 days later. You'll be like, huh? "Damn, okay." So, as we close out, here's my question to you: if you could have one protest shirt, what would your protest shirt say? All right, Aya.
I have like 1,000 protest shirts. My favorite one, well, my favorite one currently is "Until We All Win."
Nice. Yes. Goldie.
Mine would say God,
Heard.
and that's what I'm gonna rock. It's gonna be black. It may even have black writing because black, and it's just gonna say God. So like if I'm, facing down like a policeman or a troop, they just need to know that they're facing God in me. Like that's what we do. If I see a brother that's fine and he's seeing let's not be, mistake. Black love is the revolution. I need that. And then I need the reminder for everyone else out there that this is divine work. This is of God.
Yeah. Dani.
So I already said I had my shirt. I didn't put it on because it's wrinkled. But let's see if I can do this way.
Yeah.
Black, queer, magical, and real. That is why I took it from whoever said the quote first, but I put the queer in there because they didn't say queer. So that is
it's now yours. It's now yours.
That's my protest shirt.
To Brian. Brian.
I think mine would just say free.
Yeah.
Small caps.
Word. Gregory.
I think, and yes, I'm thinking. I think it would be something about my blackness. My blackness is bad. B-A-A-D. B-A-A-D. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like M.A.D. rhythms with two D's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Listen. I this is just the beginning. Yeah, we are going to have more dialogues. We're going to have more action items. I want to say thank you to Gregory, to all of the panelists today. Thank you so much. Thank you. And to everyone that's watching, thank you. Listen, tell somebody to tell somebody to show up for our next conversation.
Definitely.
Our next conversation will be on Sunday, August 9th. And this is the one that I'm hyped for, right? Because it took me a long time to go back to school. All right. The next conversation is called Arts Education 101. Education goes back to school with my big sis, Aisha Upchurch.
All right.
Who is up at Princeton. Goldie, she up at Princeton?
She's at Harvard.
Harvard. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get to Harvard, somebody. Come on. That's to say, we have to have these conversations and we have to discuss how we create solution-oriented change, right? The change has to be positive. We can't continue to have the conversations, like Dani said, we've had conversations in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. We done had conversations before Christ and after Christ. We got to now have movement. Yeah. And Soul Defined is dedicated to creating the space for BIPOC artists, regardless of how you identify, as a safe space to articulate your emotions through movement, and also use the dance as a tool to educate, enhance, and inspire our communities. Now, as we move forward, if you want to watch something that's amazing, because we're about to get off the air right now, I got to plug Project Karma virtual presentation of Tides, which went up last night on Dance Places YouTube page, right where we are. It's some great work. If you haven't seen them and seen the work that they're doing as a company, check them out. You can't go nowhere. COVID ain't left yet, so sit down and watch some great dance. All right. On top of that, I just want to say thank you. This panel was extremely special to me because it is full of friends, peers, mentors, and people who have influenced my life, who have actually put their hands in my sphere to help mold me. I'm actually on that poster behind Brian Williams right there.
Sure.
Yes.
But all that to say, if you're
Should I
interested,
zoom in on it?
Ooh, I was young and skinty. But listen, if you are interested in next steps, continuing your racial education or actions you can take, we have a few sources for you to do so. We put them in the chats on all of the platforms. I'm not sure. We usually have a slide, but I forgot to talk about this in pre-show. This is live virtual theater. Stuff happens. But all that to say, listen, if you're protesting, keep protesting. But please be safe.
Yeah.
All right. Please be safe. Please be safe. Please be safe. If you see me out there protesting, because I'm out there too, say what's up. Let's get to know each other. Let's build a community. And if you want to learn how to tap dance for free, I'm teaching a tap dance class at a dance place. Here it is, right there. Yeah. Every
Put your
Tuesday
Venmo
night.
account. Put your Venmo account.
Right.
No, it's free. It's free. It is free. If you want to donate, please donate to Dance Place. We're artists in residence at Dance Place, and they are supporting us in ways that we couldn't imagine. So I want to uplift
Shout out to
them.
Dance Place.
You know what I mean? Wah, 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 to Dance Place. But if you do want to donate to Soul Define, we don't mind because we are a 501c3 charitable organization. And you can go to our website, souldefine.com, and donate as well. All that to say is it's time to go.
Yes.
It's been good, friends. Thank you so much. I love y'all.
You guys.
Stay well, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
And panelists, just stay on. We'll take us out on the back end.
Thank you.